Hey everybody, welcome back to my shop. Today's video we're going to be showing how to replace the water pump on our 2006 2500 Silverado with the Duramax 6.6 liter engine. Those of you who followed along know that just a couple weeks ago I rebuilt the turbo and replaced all the gaskets and fasteners and everything on the up pipes and whatnot to address a stuck unison ring. So I have about not just shy of 500 miles on it since then. It's been purring like a kitten, except for when we come home from breakfast the other day and I looked underneath and there was a couple of drips of coolant. So the water pump decided to go south on me. I wish it would have started leaking prior to doing the turbo because I already had all the coolant and everything out of the system. I had the air compressor out of the way. I had the upper fan shroud. I was almost right to the water pump. And I even waffled. I got 114,000 miles. I kind of knew, I should have known better, let's put it that way. I knew that 100,000+ miles on these water pumps is kind of living on borrowed time, but I hadn't had no issues prior, and I thought, and my son's got pushing 300,000, and granted, I think it's probably been done once before, but it's purring along good. Hopefully, I didn't just cause him a water pump to go out, knock on wood. But I should have just replaced it. I was right there. That's on me. I'm not a fan of replacing everything when you go into a project, but I am a huge proponent of fixing things properly. And when you get into an area and you know of a known problem, to address it while you're there. I did not heed my own gut feeling on this, so that's on me. So we're going to tear into the water pump on this. Now, before I get started on that, I really want to thank all of our new subscribers. This is, as you know, this is kind of a small channel. I don't necessarily do it for the revenue. I don't do it for, I do it to share my passion of fixing things and fixing things properly in my home shop. And I'm hoping I can encourage others that if you're going to do a job, then don't just go in haphazardly and cobble it together and get out. Go in with the intent of learning, figuring out how things work, why things operate the way they do, sequence of operation type thing, and then fix it properly and go back out of the repair. And I'm hoping I can just, in some little way, encourage others to kind of gain that same thought process and help you to maintain your own vehicles to a manner in which you can, number one, be proud of, and number two, that you can have a reliable vehicle without having to take it to somebody else who, let's face it, in this day and age, good mechanics they're out there, don't get me wrong, they are out there, but they're getting harder and harder to find. So this way you can have a personal relationship with your own vehicles, you can have a sense of accomplishment and pride in your own vehicle. So that's kind of why I want to share my passion with you. And on that note, I really want to thank my new subscribers. I've had quite a few over the last little while. And more importantly, I want to thank my long-term subscribers. I've only had a channel a few years now. Again, it's a small channel. It's a very niche market, I guess you will, or audience. So those of you who have come along have recognized something that's clicked with you, and I appreciate that. Now, that being said, I'm kind of going to brag on myself here for a moment real quick. I was approached a couple of weeks ago by the marketing and branding editor for Banks Power. Those of you who haven't been living under a rock and familiar with light-duty diesel and so forth know who Gale Banks is. His company's been around for, I think, about 6 decades now, late 50s, early 60s, I want to say. So, I mean, he's an industry leader. His company's an industry leader in the performance aftermarket. Anyway, I was approached by them through my channel, and they had asked if I would be willing to grant them an interview. And I was honored, flattered, surprised, shocked, all the above. But anybody who subscribes to the Banks newsletter, on the last issue of the newsletter in January, late January here, I was featured in that newsletter for my YouTube channel and for sharing my passion with the YouTube audience. So I'm flattered, I'm honored, and when I asked why me, because I was curious. There's a lot of good mechanics out there, But when I asked why me, what stood out, why, I was simply told that because of my methodical thought process, the detailed nature of my repairs, the high level of workmanship, high level of quality of the workmanship, and my passion are things that really jumped out to them, and they said that those are things that are really missing in our industry today, which in all honesty is kind of sad. But I think passion is missing in a lot of industries today, not just automotive. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you very much for subscribing, because obviously if you subscribe to this channel, there's something there that we've connected on some level, and I'm grateful for that. And if there's anything else I can do that you would like to see, anything you'd like to know about me, anything, please feel free in the comments to ask. I'm an open book. What you see is what you get. I don't blow smoke up people's ass. I'm honest with people. When I had my son and my wife and I had our performance business, honesty and integrity were our pillars. That's what we base on. Any of my past customers, they knew that if they brought something to me, I was going to shoot straight with them, whether it needs a bunch of repairs now, or whether it can, okay, we need to do this, this, and this now, but this and this can kind of wait a little while. I understand money's tight for people, and cars are not everybody's priority. To some people, it's just a means of getting from A to B. Obviously, to me, and I'm hoping a lot of my audience, it's more of a passion than that. But I understand those that have no desire and just it's something to get from A to B. I fully understand that. And I'm here to try to help you save money, not spend any more money than you have to, and be able to properly maintain and care for your vehicles. So anyway, I just wanted to share that, so thank you. Now, let's dive into the repair, and I've dumped the coolant already for the second time in a couple weeks. So I've got the coolant that's been drained, and now we'll tear into the top. Oh, I need to pull the hot pipe on the driver's side. I've undone it down below. We'll go up top side now, and I'll bring the camera in and kind of show what's going on. So just to show you what parts we're working with, this is the OEM General Motors water pump. We have the gasket on the back of the water pump that goes back to the oil cooler. We have the O-ring that goes between the pump and the front cover of the engine. And then we have the two O-rings for on top of the water pump and up under by the thermostat housing for the bypass hose. And then I also picked up a new crankshaft bolt because that is a torque to yield fastener as well. All right, so I have a boost gauge. So I machined a bung years ago and welded it onto my hot pipe here for my gauge in the dash. So I'm just going to remove that nylon tube out of there that goes to my boost gauge. Then we're going to remove the clamp for the hot pipe. Okay. Down below and pull that out. So the hot pipe is out. Let's go ahead and move the resonator. Okay, so to get this upper shroud out of the way, you're going to want to remove the TCM, transmission control module here, from this bracket on the upper half of the radiator shroud. Over here you've got your AC high pressure line going over here to your condenser. There's a little clip on the top there. Be careful removing that. I've found that if you can take a pick or something and get in and kind of help open it up a little bit, it helps, because these do get brittle over time and they're hard to come by. The clips that go down to hold the upper to the lower are this tree type. What I found works best is to get a pick underneath and raise it up a little bit. Then you can take an angled pair of needle nose under and pry up on that center section, and generally it'll pop up a little bit. Then you can get underneath and pull it out. Also, if you don't have a pair of these, for these little body clips, I don't even know what brand these are. I've had them for so long, all the markings are worn off. I wish I could tell you what these were, but these work exceptionally well because you can get underneath, grab them, pry them up, then go underneath and do the same thing. And these are very thin. They work great on these type of body clips. Now that the fasteners are undone there, we'll go ahead and undo the 3 bolts at the top of the shroud. There's one right in here. Over to the oil fill tube. So once you get those 3 out and then the 2 clips on each side, you should be able to pull the upper shroud up out of the way. All right, so here I am in the passenger side fender well, accessing the passenger side lower radiator shroud fastener. It's kind of hard to see. You got your lower radiator hose right here. Here's your radiator, your makeup tube that goes up to your coolant surge tank. Right behind there is, right about where I'm pointing, is the fastener for the lower passenger side shroud bolt. What I found is easy to get to is with these long, extra long flex head ratcheting wrenches. These work great because you can just move that makeup hose out of the way and fit it in there and release it. Coming around to the driver's side lower radiator shroud, you can see the fastener right here. Especially this is pretty easy. This one's pretty easy to get to, but with the hot pipe out of the way, you can just get a regular ratcheting wrench on this one and get it broke loose. Switch over to a stubby. This one's pretty easy to get to. The other one, you kind of have to pull that makeup hose down out of the way to get you with one hand while you get the other hand in there with the wrench, but this side's pretty easy to get to. So that lower shroud bolt is out. And also, while we're right here, I'll point out that this is the 2 fasteners for the water pump. Actually, this is a little different than the LB7s. This one has a bracket that goes right underneath that back fastener, which is going to make it a little more problematic to get to. It goes back to the block. So I may take and just zip out these 2 bolts. They look like probably 15 millimeter, no, probably 17 millimeter. I'll probably zip these 2 bolts out, remove this bracket so I can get to that lower pipe bolt, stud, or nut rather, that goes back to the oil cooler. So I'll probably do that now real quick while I'm right here. So this is not too terrible to get to. Just 2, it's 18 millimeter socket. Zip those 2 bolts out. Actually, I don't even need to zip it out. I just loosened that a little bit and it allowed the bracket to drop down enough for me to gain access under that tube. Okay, so I just took the bracket. It was just those 2 bolts, that bracket for the lower radiator shroud come right out. Then I grab This is one of my favorite tools for this. This is a Blue Point one, but I think Snap-on makes it now. Easy Red, I believe, is originator of it. But it's this pivot head 3/8 drive ratchet. And then I use a 12mm torque adapter to get onto that 12mm nut at the back of this tube, and you're kind of reaching underneath it, just like so. Trying to do this with one hand, and you can see it threads that right off of there. And then also this torque adapter works really good for when comes time to put it back on, because you torque it, and at 90 degrees, if you keep that torque adapter at 90 degrees, you do not have to adjust your calculation. You can just go ahead and torque it to the spec. I think this one's like, don't quote me, I'll have to get the spec, but I think this one's like 15 foot-pounds on these studs. So there's the one nut off. Let's go ahead and get the other one. The other one does not necessarily need a torque adapter, but I've already got it handy here. Okay. All right, so those two nuts are off. Tube should be able to separate now. Yeah, you see it dripping coolant already. So then we pull the water pump off. It should come right off of that tube. I don't want to disturb the tube at the back at the oil cooler if I don't have to. This is another one of those tools. This one's made by Matco, but I believe I think it's packaged by somebody, made by somebody else and packaged for Matco. It's a fan clutch hub removing tool. It works awesome. You have this attachment that fits into an air hammer. Then you have a variety of different size open-end wrenches that fit on the hex for the fan hub, and it's quick and simple. You hook the tool as such, and it goes in the air tool, and then a couple rattles on it with the impact or the air hammer, and it moves it breaks the fan loose, and then you can thread it off by hand. So let's show it in action. So you have the tool, go ahead and fish it down. Go the right direction, fish it down onto the nut. This particular one's a 1 7/8. Yep. It's down onto the hex. And go ahead. And the fan is loose. Again, I'm not sure who makes that for Matco. I've had that one for a long time, and it works. It just works. I'm a believer in having tools that work, or no sense in having them. So that has been a lifesaver many of times. The downside to this fan is on these is you've got this outer cage that you have to fish it around, and it's not always, you have to kind of balance the shroud, or excuse me, the cage while you're threading the fan off, and then pull it out as a unit, or as an assembly rather, as two pieces. And then when it's just the opposite going back in, you have to put it back in with this outer cage around the fan and start it. That's where it can be a little problematic, is trying to get it started. Once you get it started, you just thread it on by hand like I'm taking it off here, and then take the pneumatic tool that I just showed and hammer it, give it a couple of whacks, a couple of ugga-duggas in the other direction, and it's on. So there's the fans off the hub, and the shroud is coming up and out as an assembly. regular 1/2-inch ratchet will work sufficiently. Okay, I'm just going to pull it off the compressor there first. Release the tension on the tensioner. Take it off the power steering. Make sure you know your routing. Take a picture of it with your cell phone, draw it out, whatever, but make sure you know the routing as this is coming off, because so you can put it back on the correct way. So serpentine belt's coming off the idler, off the alternator, and off the crank. Stubborn there. There we go. Serpentine belt is off. Okay, so now we'll grab this little tool. This is what they use for to lock the flywheel on the Duramax. And when I do that, I generally will take a yellow Post-it note, like this one I wrote flywheel, and I stick it here by my paperwork so I'll remember that that tool is in there. I generally don't forget, but sometimes my jobs run a day or two here or there, whether I'm trying to get parts, because I just do this on the side. So just so I don't forget, if I need oil or ATF or something waiting on I'll put a little Post-it note there so I don't forget. That just helps me keep stuff straight. Also, you need a 36-inch 12-point socket to get that flywheel off. So let's show you where this little pawl goes. Left my flashlight up top side, but right here there's a little tin cover on the transmission. Let's go ahead and gently. Okay, so there's the little cover removed from the opening, so you can see the torque converter right there. Now you just take this and put the teeth towards the flywheel, and it just goes right up in there and engages with the flywheel and locks right in there. All right, well, I guess I'd better break out the big gun for this one. Wow. All right, there we go. That was a tight sucker. Had some tight ones, but not like that. All right. Okay. All right. Got the crank bolt out. Okay, so there's an electrical connector right down here off the side of this pulley. I believe that goes to your cam sensor there. So carefully undo the clip and pull that out. And then you've got some fasteners holding that to the front of the block. Now, I shouldn't have to mention this, but I will. You've got your radiator right here, and you have, I mean, you've got plenty of room. You got 6 inches or so between the hub and another couple inches back there, back behind that. But just be cognizant of the fact that you have very delicate fins here, because you don't want to hit that radiator and damage it. I just dropped a nut right in the coolant. You don't want to damage your radiator and end up having coolant issues because you were careless when pulling the water pump, or replacing the water pump. I open up the engine as far as from the water pump here and pull the crank pulley and everything off. I like to go ahead and blow any dust or dirt or anything off so it doesn't get knocked in there when you're actually having an exposed engine. Okay, and also while I'm going back together, I will take some brake wash and a rag and run it around all the pulleys. Actually, I'm going to replace my tensioners. That one's not too bad, but they shouldn't spin free like that. I mean, it's got 114,000 on it. I might as well replace those. I got a new belt and everything, but I wasn't quite sure. I wanted to see what these felt like. That idler is, yeah, not bad. This one's a little dry. Tensioner's not too bad, but I think I'm gonna at least replace the pulley. Actually, that's the best feeling one on the, that's the best feeling one, is the one on the tensioner. That one's probably okay. It doesn't spin freely and it doesn't feel rough. It's not making any noise. So let's go ahead, and I got the lower hose clamp undone, and I've run a hose pick around the hose to break it all loose. So let's just go ahead and push it down and free of the water pump. There we go. I got a bucket down underneath it there, so we're good. We're golden there. Okay. I'm starting to get a little bit of play in the crankshaft pulley here. Kind of slowly walking it off. There we go. It's coming off nice and gently, easily coming off. There's a one or two, I can't remember, one or two bolts back behind the crank pulley here. Okay, so we're just walking the crank pulley off. Okay, go ahead and remove the fastener for the bypass tube. Okay, and just pivot that out of the way. And I do have a new O-ring for the top, so let's go ahead and pull this short hose off. I'm clearing the water pump now, so I should be able to just walk that down out of the thermostat housing. It's not wanting to cooperate real well. There we go. There we go. And of course I dropped the hose, so I've got a new O-ring for the top here of the bypass hose, as well as the bottom one where it goes into the water pump. All right, so we've got the bypass tube out of the way. We're going to do the bolts for the water pump. And here's the last one. Okay. So the one was a nut, and of course it dropped in the coolant. Go. Be careful, and it come right off the studs. Everything down here now, I've got everything wiped down. I've run a little bit of emery around this surface here where the O-ring goes in for the water pump. I've kind of cleaned off some of the spilt coolant. I just have to do some clean around the pulleys here. I am going to put new tension, or excuse me, new idlers on it. But let's go over to the bench, and I'll show you how I prep the water pump for installation. All right, so I have the tube here. I cut a short length of hose here, a little bit of Sil Glide, and run around the inside of the hose to aid in installation. And the new upper O-ring is going to go around the tube. Now when you put it on, a lot of times you'll roll them. So again, I like to take and use my little O-ring tool and just kind of run it around to relax that O-ring so that it's not twisted as it's going around. Then a little bit of Sil Glide to aid in installation and to keep that O-ring sliding up into the bore rather than rolling, twisting, or worse, getting nicked or cut. Okay, so there's that. So this tube is ready to go. The bypass tube is ready to go in place. I took these studs out of the back of the old water pump, cleaned them up, and installed them here. Installed them here in the new water pump. Then I'll take a little bit of, I don't know, I used to call it Hylamar. I think Hylamar is a brand or a brand from way back. I think Loctite makes one now called 518. So I like to put that on these gaskets just to kind of help give them a little extra. I'm not a big fan of gooping up gaskets with RTV. I don't see the need in that, to be honest with you. That kind of defeats the whole point of a gasket. So again, I'll take a little bit of Sil Glide and place it in a few, I don't know, about every 90 degrees or so around the perimeter here where this O-ring goes. And then I'll take and put some on my fingers and pull the O-ring through it so the O-ring's coated. Again, this is just to kind of help so as it's going together, it doesn't twist or roll. You can use motor oil. You don't have to use Sil Glide. You can use a motor oil or anything. It's just I've used Sil Glide for decades, and it's kind of my go-to. Okay, so the O-ring is in place there with Sil Glide, so that's ready to go in. Now I'll take a little bit of the Hylamar. and just put a very thin layer around the water pump there. Put the gasket in place. And then a little bit more on the gasket there. Okay, so the water pump is pretty much ready to go in place. Now I will take, also before I do that, I'm going to take a little bit of Silk Glide and run it around with a lower radiator hose. Goes on, this is just to aid in installation of the lower radiator hose. Okay, so that water pump is prepped, ready to go in. While the water pump's going down into place, we also want to make sure we guide the studs onto the tube going back to the oil cooler. Okay. Okay, that's in place. Now I'm just going to stick my head through the fender well and ensure that tube, both studs are through that tube, which they are. We have a longer bolt, goes down here. If you're facing it, it's going to be about the 4 o'clock position. Feel it, but I can't. There we go. I can feel it, I just couldn't see it. And the other one goes up here to the 12 o'clock position. And the stud requires the nut. It goes down here at about the 7 o'clock position. So I'll run these in to snug them. And then these get torqued to 18 foot-pounds. I got torque wrench set to 18 foot-pounds. Snug it up a little bit here. Now I think I'm going to go around the back side and torque those 2 nuts on the back before that Hylamar, our flange gasket sealant, the 518, sets up, and then we can come back around here to the front and put the upper tube in. Okay, it's going to be hard to see, but if you keep this at 90 degrees, it should stay the same, you get the same 18 foot-pounds. So let's see if we can get that on the flanged on that flanged, or on that nut. Showing up or not. Okay. And actually, I don't need the adapter on that line. Just go right to a socket on that one. Go ahead and pull that little radiator hose up into place. There we go. Okay, now I'll grab a hand. Maybe a 1/4 inch ratchet and go the last little bit by hand. Tighten that hose clamp on. Okay, bypass tube going back in place. So I've got the O-ring down here. I put it in a little bed of Silglide and then smeared Silglide around the outside. I also got Silglide on this upper tube where it's going to fit up into the thermostat housing, and I'm going to push this new 1/2 inch tube. There we go. So now the theory is when we get the tube up in place, the hose spigot here should just clear, or maybe just barely come in contact, and then we'll slide the hose and split the difference. Now you want to be careful. That's why it's important you put some grease, Silglide, something on this O-ring, because as you're sliding this base over onto it's in place onto the water pump right there, you don't want to catch that O-ring and roll it. Okay, so there we go. Tube slipped up inside nice and easily. Now we pivot it. And it's well above, it's probably 1/8 inch above the O-ring there, which is good because then we can position it into place. Start our couple of fasteners so it doesn't mess with the O-ring there. Okay, just barely got the fasteners started there. Now, use a hook tool or something to where you can get this hose barely catching the hose spigot. There we go. There we go. So now it's positioned over the lip. Okay, and then we can grab the hose and slide it back and split the difference, about like so. And I hope that showed up. So the barb for the hose spigot is about right there and right there. So this hose just needs to be tightened up, and then these fasteners will get torqued in place at 18 foot-pounds. Fasteners can be torqued to 18 foot-pounds. Okay. Now at this point, the cooling system is tight again. So before I go through the hassle of putting everything back together, I like to ensure that the cooling system is going to be tight. So I will pull a vacuum on the cooling system next, and to ensure that everything's tight before I start buttoning things back up and going back together. So let me get that out, my pressure, my vacuum lift out, my air lift, and we will pull a vacuum on the cooling system and let it sit for, I don't know, I usually like to let it sit for about 20 minutes or so, make sure the needle stabilizes and doesn't creep up. I have a vacuum pulled on the cooling system. It's holding just shy of 25 inches of vacuum. Been holding that for a little bit now. I've got the water pump obviously in, up, all the cooling systems tightened up. I like to pull a vacuum at this point to make sure I don't have any leaks before I put everything back together, only to find out that I've got a hose clamp or something that's not sealing. Next I'm going to be putting the harmonic balancer on. I got a new bolt for that because it's a torque to yield bolt. The torque on that is 74 foot-pounds plus 105 degrees. Harmonic balancer going on. Get the pin lined up. There we go. Slide the dampener on. All right, so I've got this set to 74 foot-pounds. So I'm going to torque it to 74, then I'll set the angle function. And I'll probably mark it as well, because I got a funny feeling I'm not going to be able to creep up on this with the torque wrench as easily as my longer wrench. Okay. So there's 74 foot-pounds. So now, $105, so I'm gonna mark that so I can double check, make sure we're set on 105. Okay. Oh, Nelly. Shit, I'm only at 80 degrees. Here's 90. There we go. There we go. All right. Damn. Okay, new tensioners, or excuse me, idlers going on. All right, the tensioner and both idlers get torqued to 37 foot-pounds. Okay. Get snug. These are get the torque wrench and torque these as well. So now we will just grab some brake wash and run around these couple pulleys here. I already did the power steering. I already did the crank while it was off, the dampener. And the new ones I wiped off over there. So just gotta do that when I can put the belt on. Last few items here. I've got the hot pipe connected down below. I've got it connected up here. I went through and tested the intercooler system with my Kent Moore tester. Everything's good there. I just need to tighten up this clamp now and hook my boost line up. The fan shroud is connected down here under the water pump on the driver's side, and over here under the battery tray, just under the between the tensioner and the battery, or excuse me, the airbox tray, between the tensioner and the airbox tray on the passenger side. The fan is tightened on with the air hammer attachment for the fan hub. Let's see, what else? I'm getting ready to put the upper shroud on here and the airbox, and this thing is just wrapping up. There's the completed assembly, all back together. Coolant's at proper level. There's all the belt train, shrouds all bolted back in, TCM, and everything's good to go. Boost pipes all hooked up, the boost line for the gauge. So another successful job. Thing purrs like a kitten. So appreciate you watching. If this was helpful, give me a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you.